Everybody ready? Good morning, everyone. My name is Nick Brown, the Washington State Attorney. A host of people from the Attorney General's office, from the ACLU, Washington Bus, and One America. This morning, the state of Washington, along with Oregon, Arizona, Illinois, filed suit in the Western District of Washington against the President of the United States for his unconstitutional, un-American, and cruel action in his attempt to redefine what it means to be an American. The president's executive order claiming to end birthright citizenship in the United States is plainly and obviously illegal. Washington will not abide by such harmful and unjust action. At its heart, our case is about the meaning and value of American citizenship. On Monday, one man, the president, said that the citizenship of millions of Americans born to immigrants in this country means less, that the children of immigrants born into citizenship don't have as much value in this country as others. He is wrong. We all recognize that the president began his political career in large part by inciting fear and hatred against immigrant communities. Now he wants to redefine American citizenship altogether, but he cannot. One man cannot simply erase what the meaning of the Constitution is, not even the president. Birthright citizenship has been the law in this country for over 150 years. It is in the Constitution for a reason. It was born of the Civil War, when our nation had a population of formerly enslaved people who were in effect stateless. Birthright citizenship was affirmed by the Supreme Court to apply to the children of non-citizens during the time of the Chinese Exclusion Act. Birthright citizenship makes clear that citizenship cannot be conditions on one's race, ethnicity, or where their parents came from. What's not in the Constitution is anything saying the president has the authority to decide who is granted citizenship. Generations of policymakers and lawmakers in this country, from the Supreme Court to Congress, and until now, the executive branch, have upheld this right throughout our history. Here's what the impact of this order would have. The president's executive order would deny citizenship to 150,000 newborn children each year in the United States. That's thousands of people born here in Washington who would be denied the key to full participation and opportunity in American society. It would render them undocumented at birth. It could even render them the citizens. That's why we filed suit today and are challenging the president's unconstitutional actions. The claims in our complaint are straightforward. There are two of them. First, that the president's order violates the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And second, that it separately violates a provision of federal immigration law from 1940. In addition to our complaint, we are filing an emergency motion within the next 24 hours that will seek to block any federal agency from relying on the order born in our state. We will ask the court to intervene before the order even goes days ago. And I swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington. This case is in furtherance of that oath. It is our obligation to protect Washingtonians from unjust actions, no matter where they arise. We are joined today is so important, but I'd like to invite one of them up here to follow me. That's Monica Mendoza Coughlin.
Thank you, Attorney General. Dearest Washingtonians, my name is Monica Mendoza Coughlin, and it is with great honor that I address you all today. I want to give special thanks to Attorney General Brown for this invitation, and I wanted to give a special shout out to One America, the leading immigrant rights organization here in Washington State, who I volunteered with since 2013. I'm standing here proudly today, a first-generation American born in South King County to two formerly undocumented farm workers who migrated from Michoacan, Mexico. My parents came here with the promise of an American dream, the promise of freedom, of democracy. Largely thanks to their sacrifices, I was able to become a first-generation college graduate and now a first-generation law school graduate set to take the bar exam later this year. Unfortunately, we are in a dark time in our national government where the dreams of my parents are threatened to be taken away for so many people in the future. As mentioned just yesterday, Trump announced with an executive order that he would attempt to take away birthright citizenship, among a series of other orders. I understand that many may feel frightened, scared, worried. Perhaps you may be in my situation. You recently became a citizen, an expecting parent. Please know that here in Washington, our leaders will do everything they can to ensure that every immigrant is safe, that attempted orders like these are simply attempts. For even if our national leaders will try to do away with what is legal, have solace in the fact that our Attorney General will ensure that Washington remains safe for immigrants, that the law will be upheld, Constitution, the 14th Amendment, and he will fight to keep the promise of liberty, truth, and justice for all enshrined. I thank Attorney General Brown and all in his office for their work to uphold this promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. I also want to give special recognition and thanks to Governor Ferguson, former Attorney General of this office, for doing a tremendous amount of work over the past year to prepare us for a myriad of anticipated actions by the new presidential administration. And AG Ferguson, now Governor Ferguson, and his team have worked really collaboratively with attorney generals across the country and have put in a tremendous amount of work to get us ready for a day like this. It is unfortunate that this day has come, but I want to give him recognition for all of the work that we've put in as an agency over the past year. I'm also joined by the leader of our Civil Rights Division, Colleen Melody, who leads a very hardworking staff of attorneys and paralegals and assistants who have led this case today and have put in a tremendous amount of work personally over the past year. And we will open it up for a few questions now.
Attorney General.
The cases are very similar. We're both challenging the birthright citizenship executive order. Our state case has 4 states in it. Theirs has, I believe, 17 or 18. And each state is talking about the impacts to their individual states. But at their heart, the claims are very similar. Here in Washington, as I've talked about, are working very collaboratively with other states and anticipate we'll have that same approach on other potential.
Actually, I've got 4 questions.
I'll give you one, Joe.
What are the specific and unique harms to Washington?
Well, there are 2 principally. One, let's focus on the people. There are people who will be born here in this state in the coming days, in the coming weeks, in the coming months, who will no longer, if this attempt or this order took effect, would no longer be considered citizens of the United States of America. They would be denied some of their basic rights as Americans. They would be denied the opportunity to have a passport, to claim their citizenship. All things that generations of Americans have been granted as a matter of law, all things that are plainly and obviously protected by our Constitution. And so I am really focused on what is the impact to those individual people. It would also have impact to the state of Washington. We receive as a state in a myriad of different issues around healthcare, education, funding for the services that we provide to people in this state, in part from the federal government. And when the federal government and the president unilaterally is trying to deny their citizenship, that would have an immediate impact on our ability to care for the health and well-being of the people in our state. So there is a direct personal and individual impact to thousands of Washingtonians and a direct impact to the financial well-being of the state of Washington. Sir.
You mentioned that the Supreme Court last ruled on this through that process again. Do you think that's the goal of this executive order?
Well, we have a long way to go, right? So we filed a case in the Western District. There is a similar case filed in the District of Massachusetts. So we have a preliminary complaint and pending a motion in the district court level, and we'll make our claims plain there. But as I said, this is plainly illegal. This one is fairly obvious. Not only is it spelled out explicitly in our Constitution, the Supreme Court has specifically weighed in on this case. The case out of San Francisco following the Chinese Exclusion Act was plain on its face. This one is an obvious one. My hope is that every level of court, the district court, the Court of Appeals, and if we go to the Supreme Court, would rule unanimously because of the well-established precedent. But first step is to do the district court case.
This morning, Washington State Republicans said we should be focused on issues that impact our state and not on this. What's your response?
Well, I would say two things. One, as I said at the end of my remarks, my obligation is to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of Washington State. I would think that everyone in the legislature, regardless of party, would want me to uphold my obligation. And it is, in my judgment and the judgment of this team, that the president's order violates the law. So I do not think that my friends in the legislature of any party would want me to simply ignore that. Second, what I would say is this is harming Washingtonians. This will harm Washingtonians by denying them the rights of Americans that they are entitled to as a matter of law. And it would harm the state of Washington, citizens included, by putting a tremendous new financial burden on us, on the taxpayers here in Washington, to fund all these vital services that the federal government now helps provide. So I would say that this action does exactly that, to protect Washingtonians and defend our Constitution, and I'm sure they would want me to do that.
There was a recent poll that says 51% of Washingtonians believe that we should be adhering to the Trump administration's policies. Kind of a twofold question here. What do you say to those folks? I mean, it's 51%. 40% of others say we should resist, with a 9% saying they have no opinion. Then we've also seen a majority of conservatives say that they want to focus on the part of the phrase of the 14th Amendment that says subject to thereof, which, or the jurisdiction to subject to thereof. How do you anticipate, or if the Trump administration does narrow focus on that particular portion of the amendment, what would happen then?
Well, let me just say, I do not think that the people of Washington want me to make decisions about the cases we file based on polling, or based on what is popular or unpopular. We will bring actions to defend Washington's laws and the United States Constitution if 1% of the people think it was the right decision. If I think that it violates our law, that it harms Washingtonians, and that we are the right venue to bring a case, we will do that. And so I'm certainly not driven by polling. A second, certainly I've read the president's executive order. It is, in my view, a rather fringe theory that this clause changes decades and generations of legal precedent upheld by our Supreme Court. So I think it is a very fringe theory that has developed in recent time, but I feel quite confident in the strength of our complaint, that the court will agree with us and with our partners in other states and advocacy groups that are bringing their own cases.
Could you tell us a little bit more about why you're confident that this is a good case to bring in the Western District of Washington as opposed to one of the other districts of the states that joined you on this complaint? And also how you see your future interactions.
Well, as I said, we believe there are direct impacts here, and that is why we decided to bring a case here. We are partnering with a handful of other states that have similar impacts in their own states. And this is also a district that has heard is in our bench here in Washington. So I feel like this is the right place to be. But it's really the facts and the people that are impacted that are driving this lawsuit. Moving forward, there were a myriad of executive orders that were issued yesterday. Our team has spent a lot of time looking through those. We will continue to evaluate those. There are going to be things that President Trump and his team do that I don't like, that are plainly illegal, that follow precedent, that are done with congressional support. And it is not my goal or to challenge every single thing that comes to the Trump administration. And there might be opportunities for us to work collaboratively. But again, my obligation is to protect the people of this state and the laws of this state. And that is why we have brought this particular suit.
Are there other?
Sorry, John.
So one other thing from the Washington State Republican chair, Jim Walsh, he called this a craven political move, searching for a headline, and said that you're positioning yourself for a U.S. Senate run in 2020.
I've been the Attorney General for 6 days. That's just ridiculous.
You just talked about the financial impact to the state. This is coming at a time when your predecessor has announced he wants you to cut 6%.
Well, the budget is obviously a serious matter for us and all state agencies. I do think that the state is facing a real important debate over the next few months, how to fund a state government. We as an agency will be looking for savings that we can make. We obviously don't have the same obligation to make a 6% cut like the agencies that are responsible for Governor Ferguson. But we do take that directive very seriously, that there are savings that need to be found. What I will also say is that the any legal purposes fund that has funded so much of the great work of this office over the last many years, part of that fund funds this type of case. It funds civil rights work, environmental enforcement, consumer protection, and the like. But I do think it is our obligation as an agency to work really collaboratively with the governor's office, with the legislature, to find savings where we can, but also to advocate for the impact this agency in particular has for all of Washington. Number 2, John.
Okay, President Trump has issued countless executive orders yesterday. Are you anticipating in the next 2 or 3 weeks filing lawsuits against any of the other ones? My bottom line is, are we going to show up here every other day for
I won't be here every other day. Look, we have a series of executive orders yesterday. There will be more that will come. This team will continue to do what it has done over the past year, is to look at those very closely and see if there are things that violate our laws and harm to what. Offended by the pardoning of 1,500 people that stormed our Capitol, that assaulted law enforcement, and that plainly violated the law. But the president has wide pardon power. We will look at those orders closely, but I don't anticipate, for example, anything the state of Washington or other states could do to undermine that. But it is personally offensive to me. When I was U.S. attorney, we had people dedicated from this district working with the Main justice lawyers and staff to help support that effort. There was, I think, a few dozen convicted and sentenced for their unlawful and criminal action, and they have all now been pardoned. I think that is a travesty of justice. It doesn't mean that we should sue about it. So there will be things in that category, movements and comments and things that are put out during the course of the campaign. There'll be other things where Washington is involved in litigation, but I do not intend or plan on being here every other day. But this particular case around birthright citizenship is so plainly and obviously illegal and so harmful and so un-American that litigation was appropriate.
Want to do it? Okay.
We have some questions online and on the phone. So,
hi, can you guys hear me all right?
yes.
So just to come back to that question about the other lawsuits, at this point we understand that there's been 4 separate federal lawsuits challenging this executive order by a combined 22 different states and 2 cities. To the extent that filing so many different cases in different jurisdictions could actually harm the cause, I guess, what are the specific unique threats that this is, and what's your response to criticism that this lawsuit could amount to just political showboating rather than an effective, unified democratic response?
Well, look, I do think there's going to be a myriad of cases brought by other states, obviously, by individual interest groups. And I think in this particular executive order, we're likely to see, potentially dozens of cases. This is a matter of such seriousness that I do not worry about multiple cases being brought in multiple places. In fact, I think there are often times where it is beneficial for many courts to hear about the tremendous impact every arms are. And I think that is a good thing in this case, to demonstrate to courts all across the United States the harm in those specific communities. And in this instance, at least, I do see tremendous benefit in bringing multiple cases. I'm not concerning myself about the idea that this is political grandstanding. Look, I have no interest in continuing to sue the President of the United States, whether it's Donald Trump or whoever the next president is. But it is my oath to defend the Constitution. And the vast majority of lawyers, academics who have looked at birthright citizenship know that this violates the law. They understand that the arguments that are being made by the Trump administration are fringe theories. The vast majority of scholars, including some of the most conservative jurists and lawyers in America, have repeatedly said that birthright citizenship is the law of the land and that no executive can simply undermine that foundational American principle because he doesn't like immigrants. And that is what has happened here.
We have another one on that?
Josh. Good, yeah. Okay, unmuted.
The promise of freedom, of democracy. Largely thanks to their sacrifices, I was able. And the president.
We lost Keenan. Okay, we lost Keenan. Any other questions?
What this executive order means, so speak to that, what do they need to do?
Well, you know, I think that fear is well founded, and I don't want to undervalue that. All throughout the president's campaign, and indeed most of his political career, so much of his actions have been driven by pitting people against each other, by driving hatred and fear towards the unknown, towards people that are marginalized, and there will be real impacts from the president's actions. On this particular executive order, I think it is scary that the president would come in and try to undermine so much of what has been foundational to America. And so my message to the people of Washington, both the people that are directly impacted, to their family members, and people who will have no personal impact, is that we will do everything in our power to defend the law and to protect people. And this is a case that is worth bringing, and I'm confident of our chances moving forward. Okay, we'll stop there.